Unfortunately, we don't need someone with a disability. Do your best to live on your own.
What is this?
There was a piece of paper on the table. It was addressed to me. Unlike my sister Chloe, I was born with no control over my legs. It must have been troublesome for them. Then, my smartphone rang. It was a call from my dad.
Hello?
Is that you, Brittany? Did you see the letter?
I saw it, but…
Well, that's how it is. Goodbye.
Wait a minute.
What do you want?
Of course, I have something to say.
What is this letter? It says exactly what it means. I'm tired of raising a daughter like you. Don't worry about us. He hung up the phone abruptly. Desperate to figure out what to do, I called my mom next.
Hello, Mom?
From the sound of your voice, I guess you saw the letter. They said I'm a burden because of my disability. They even called me a monster. I see, but you don't have to worry.
What?
Because you are. 8 years have passed since my mom's shocking revelation. One day, my dad showed up at my high-rise condo.
How can someone like you afford to live in a place like this?
Would you like me to tell you? I shared the secret with my dad. He went into a frenzy and started experiencing hell. My name is Brittany, and I'm 26 years old now. I live comfortably on the 55th floor of a high-rise condo. But achieving this lifestyle was no easy feat. I was born with a rare disease that causes my muscles to weaken over time. I still remember one thing my dad said to me. I think it was when I was in kindergarten.
Why were you born this way? Isn't this your fault? What?
Chloe was born without any problems. Chloe is my sister, 2 years older than me. I was listening to my parents' conversation from the living room. My room was next to the living room, so I could hear everything. Even though I was young, I understood that they were complaining about me.
You don't have to say that.
Then you take care of her from now on.
That's not fair.
I'm leaving it up to you. I quietly pulled the comforter over my head. From that day on, their attitude towards me became noticeably harsher. Even when I spoke to them, they wouldn't give me a proper response. It was because I was born with a disability. Since then, my mom has always tried to be considerate so that I wouldn't worry. However, despite everything, I did what I could on my own, and I never felt sorry for myself because I was born this way. I think Chloe's influence played a big part in that. Sorry, I overslept a bit because I stayed up late last night. It's okay. I managed to get dressed halfway. I'll help you. It's fine. You need to get ready first, Chloe. Since I started elementary school, Chloe had been helping me with my morning routine. Dad didn't approve of Chloe helping me and would complain.
How long are you going to keep doing this?
I'm almost done.
Brittany can do it herself. Come on, you can do it, right? Yeah.
While I was getting dressed, Chloe would sneak in to help when Dad wasn't looking. Sorry about earlier. It's okay. I can't keep troubling you, Chloe. Then Chloe hugged me. Why all of a sudden? I'll protect you, Brittany.
Then I'll do my best to protect you too, Chloe.
I felt our bond as sisters grow stronger. We tried not to talk much in front of Dad. We thought if he saw us getting along well, he would say something. I'm off to work. Okay. Have a good day. Dad would sometimes go to work even on his days off. Those days were like heaven for me. Normally, if I played games or something, he'd get irrationally angry and tell me to stop.
Since Dad's not here today, let's play a lot. Is that okay?
Sure, but don't overdo it.
I know.
Then I enjoyed playing games with Chloe in the living room. It must have been about 2 hours later. Mom had gone shopping at this time. I heard the door open and thought Mom had returned.
What are you doing?
Dad's voice made me turn around.
Dad, why are you here?
What about work?
I forgot something, so I came back. Where's Mom? She's out shopping. So, what are you two doing? Tell me.
Looking into Dad's eyes, I felt paralyzed with fear. It felt like my whole body turned to stone. Chloe noticed and tried to protect me.
We were playing a game. But it was my idea to invite Brittany. It's not her fault. Really?
Yes, really. However, as Dad pulled Chloe's arm, I feared she might get hit. Overwhelmed with a sense of duty to protect Chloe, I spoke up. It was me. I wanted to play.
What? So, please don't hit Chloe. So it was you. Go to your room.
Yes. I obeyed and headed to my room. At least the house was built to be wheelchair accessible. From my room, I heard Dad yelling. I cursed my helplessness. As I pondered, the door opened. I tensed, thinking it was Dad, but it was Mom.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. What about Chloe?
She's fine.
I tried to head to the living room.
Where are you going?
I need to help Chloe.
Really, it's okay. If you go, Dad will just get angrier.
Okay, I'll stay here. Mom was right. If I went, it might make things worse. I decided to trust Mom's assurance. I'm sorry. I should have been stronger. Dad was a domineering husband, and Mom was doing her best to avoid provoking him. It's not your fault. Thank you for everything. After a while, Chloe came to my room.
Chloe!
Dad's gone to work, so it's okay now.
Did he say anything to you?
Yeah, a little.
But don't worry about it, Brittany. I'm fine.
No matter the situation, Chloe always smiled. Despite going through the same hardships, she remained strong. Mom also stood between Dad and me, shielding me from his rage. I was always being helped. Determined not to burden them, I tried to find ways to help myself. Things changed when Chloe entered middle school. She started distancing herself from me. She used to help with daily tasks like dressing and bathroom needs. But as she got busier with sports and friends, I understood it couldn't be helped. I thought I just needed to endure it. I need to try harder. By then, my hands had also weakened, making it difficult to hold heavy objects. But I didn't give up. One day, I was organizing my room, putting away books from a shelf. That's when it happened. As I grabbed the shelf, it wobbled, and things started falling around me. Ouch. I need to pick this up quickly. However, because I was sitting in my wheelchair, I couldn't reach down to pick things up. As I struggled desperately, the door was thrown open.
What's all this noise? What the hell is going on here?
This was the worst. The last person I wanted to see this mess was Dad.
Well, this is...
I tried to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come out right. To Dad, it probably sounded like I was making excuses.
Who do you think is going to clean this up? Well, I
had no memory of Dad ever helping with anything. If he had, it was so insignificant that I couldn't recall it. Of course, I didn't say that out loud.
Honestly, why do you always have to cause trouble?
He sighed dramatically, looking at me with exasperation. He had no idea how it felt to be on the receiving end of that gaze. Dad's lecture showed no signs of stopping.
Unlike Chloe, you can't do anything, can you? Do you understand that? Huh? I know I might not be able to do as much as Chloe, but I still want to do what I can on my own.
If I was going to get yelled at anyway, I decided to voice my thoughts to Dad. I had a faint hope that maybe he'd understand.
Do what you can, huh?
Yes. Now he started to laugh out loud.
What?
You're funny.
You think you can do anything? You, a disabled person?
I had expected some harsh words, but this was complete rejection. He kept laughing. This wasn't how a father should treat his daughter. From that moment, I stopped thinking. I just waited for time to pass.
Hey! Are you even listening?
I didn't even respond.
Disgusting.
He spat the words at me and left the room. Alone in my cluttered room, I cried. From that day on, I swore I wouldn't cry anymore, even though I was just a child. From then on, Mom mainly took care of me. Of course, Dad didn't do anything. He didn't even seem to care.
Oh dear, you have a fever, don't you?
Huh? Do I?
You should stay home today. But I'm fine. I can go.
I tried desperately to convince Mom, but she insisted I stay home to avoid any complications. So, I stayed home that day. The reason I wanted to go to school so badly was because Dad happened to be off that day. I wanted to avoid being alone with him at all costs. But then, something unexpected happened. Are you all right? He asked as he entered my room. I pretended to be asleep, hoping he would leave soon. But Dad didn't leave. I covered myself with the comforter, tense, and waited. I'm leaving these here for you. When I finally sat up, I saw sports drinks and jelly cups on the table. Despite myself, I felt a surge of happiness. I had never been cared for like this before. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion. What was his motive? That day, Dad came to check on me several times. Each time, I pretended to be asleep. Are you all right? Mom asked when she returned from her part-time job.
Yeah, I don't think I have a fever anymore.
Did something happen?
It's just... Dad seemed kind today. Oh, good.
Good? What was she talking about? Actually, I asked Dad to take care of you today.
You did? It seems like it went well. Well, he didn't really talk to me, but... I was surprised. I gave him a stern talk. I hope he'll be kinder to you now.
I felt conflicted. I had tried so hard to keep my emotions in check. And now I didn't know what to think. After that, just as Mom said, Dad began to show more concern for me. He started helping more and even began to talk to me a bit.
It looks like things are going well between you and Dad, don't they?
Does it?
It makes me happy to see you getting along with him. But there's still everything that happened before.
I know. It won't be easy. Honestly, I'd love to spend more time with you, too.
It's okay,
I said quickly, giving Chloe a smile. I hoped my relationship with Dad would continue to improve. However, when I started middle school, Dad's attitude toward me became stricter. I understood why. It was because Chloe had important exams coming up. I thought I could deal with it for that reason, but then I realized there was more to it. I need to go to the bathroom, I told Dad. I could manage it on my own, but I chose to ask him on purpose.
I'm busy right now. I can't help you. What? You're a middle schooler now. If you can't even go to the bathroom by yourself, what are you going to do?
I realized this was the real Dad. The kindness he had shown felt like a fleeting dream. And yet, the changes didn't stop there. Mom also started becoming distant. Mom? I need something. Sorry, I'm busy. Maybe later. I couldn't ask Chloe for help. As a result, my priority in the family kept dropping. Even when I asked for something, I was ignored. Even though I was growing up in middle school, it was painful not to connect with my family.
From now on, Brittany will eat in her room. What? Why? Understood?
Mom and Chloe were silent. So, I started eating alone in my room more often. One reason for this was the result of a hospital checkup. My condition wasn't good, and the illness was progressing. Dad decided this after seeing the results. I began to wonder if I was really part of this family.
Why only Brittany?
I heard this while studying.
Just get ready. If Brittany isn't going, then I'll stay home too.
Is that what you want?
Chloe, your first choice was a private school, right? Yes, but...
Stop this already.
Are you defying me too? You can stay, but you'll give up on the private school.
I felt like I had overheard something terrible. I finally understood the mystery. Dad was using the entrance exams to blackmail Mom and Chloe. I had never harbored any resentment towards Dad before, but this was too much. Yet, what could I do when my body wasn't cooperating? This thought occupied my mind from that day onward.
I'm going out for a bit.
I'm sorry, Brittany.
I'll be fine.
In the distance, I heard Dad calling out. It seemed he was telling them to hurry.
Hurry up, go.
I put on a brave face, not wanting to burden them with my sadness. They regularly went out without me. After a while, I got used to it. At first, they would hide their outings from me, but eventually, Dad stopped being discreet.
All right. Let's eat out today. Come on, let's go. Isn't this too sudden? That's right. It's my decision. Move it. Oh, and Brittany, you stay home.
Chloe, sitting next to me, started to protest, but I grabbed her arm to stop her.
I'll be fine. Go ahead.
Brittany seems to understand much better.
Hey!
Do you know what they say about me at work? You don't, do you? Dad started talking about how pitiful his life was.
I'm miserable at work because I'm the father of a disabled daughter. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?
Even if he said that, there was no way I could understand. Even if it were true, taking it out on his daughter was inexcusable. As a father, he was a complete failure. However, there was no way I, a middle school student, could defy my parent and survive. Especially in my case. I needed a wheelchair to move around, and having support made a huge difference.
I'll manage on my own. It's okay.
Mom and Chloe looked at me with concern.
Besides, if I go with you, I'll just be a burden, and people will stare, right?
Chloe didn't seem entirely convinced by my words, but she went out with our parents. It was wise not to defy Dad in his current state. I thought it was a prudent decision. Even after I entered high school, Dad's attitude towards me remained unchanged, but then something happened that made all the previous incidents seem trivial. What should I do? I watched my family leave and returned to my room. I couldn't help but wonder how long I would be trapped in this life. It happened during the summer break of my 3rd year in middle school. I'm sorry, but can you take care of Brittany for 3 days?
Aren't you coming with us? You see, Brittany is a student preparing for exams and wants to focus on studying.
Is that okay with you?
Yes. In that case, leave her to us.
And so, I was left at my grandparents' house. Dad breathed out a lie so easily. He didn't seem to feel any guilt towards his own parents. Seeing Dad wave at me with a smile filled me with an indescribable fear. Once Dad and the others were out of sight, Grandma asked me.
It's just us here, so no need to hold back. What?
Are you really okay with not going?
If I'm there, Mom and Chloe won't have fun. I absolutely hate that.
I replied with determination. You're so kind, Brittany.
Not really. But here, you don't have to worry about anyone's eyes. Do whatever you like. Okay. Thank you.
Grandma might have understood what I was thinking. But she didn't pry. I felt truly comfortable. As a middle schooler, I didn't have the power or wisdom to change my situation. Besides, it wasn't pleasant to have others prying into my life. So, I was grateful that Grandma just watched over me warmly. 3 days later, Mom and Chloe came to pick me up.
Wait, is it just the two of you?
I'm sorry. Victor went home ahead of us.
Oh, I see.
Was Brittany okay?
She was such a good girl. My advice is to keep an eye on her and make sure she's all right.
Okay. I was listening to Mom and Grandma's conversation from behind a pillar. On the way home.
I'm okay, really. You don't have to push yourself.
That's right. We're on your side, Brittany.
I know, but I don't want anything to happen to you too because of me.
When we got back home, Dad continued to give me the cold shoulder. Things returned to their usual routine. Normally, this would have broken my spirit, but with Mom and Chloe supporting me, I barely managed to hold on. However, even they started to avoid me, probably because Dad had ordered them to. Being ignored by Dad was something I was used to, but having Mom and Chloe treat me like that was heart-wrenching. It felt like I was truly all alone.
It's okay. Hang in there, you can do it.
Eventually, those words became my mantra. After that, I tried to stay in my room as much as possible when I was home. I thought that if I stayed in my room, I wouldn't have to interact with anyone and wouldn't have to deal with any unnecessary hurt. However, I realized that this was a mistake. It was a Sunday morning in the spring of my 10th grade year. When I woke up, the house seemed unusually quiet. I went to the living room and found a piece of paper on the table. Sorry, but we don't need someone like you.
Do your best to survive. What is this?
There was a note on the table. It was addressed to me. Sure, I couldn't use my legs properly, but I didn't deserve this. Dad must have reached his limit. Then my smartphone rang with a call from Dad.
Hello?
Is this Brittany? Did you see the letter?
Yes, I saw it, but...
Well, that's how it is. Bye.
Wait a minute.
What do you want?
Of course, I have something to say.
What's with the letter? It is what it is. I'm tired of raising a daughter like you. Don't worry about us. With that, he abruptly hung up the phone. Desperately thinking about what to do, I decided to call Mom. Hello, Mom?
From the sound of your voice, I guess you saw the letter.
They said someone like me is a burden. They even called me a monster.
I see. But don't worry. What? Because you're not the daughter of that worthless man. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Listen carefully. Call the number I'm about to give you. Wait a minute. Explain it properly.
I'm sorry. Victor is nearby. I'll call you back. I was left in a state of shock. If what Mom was saying was true, then what does it mean that I'm not Dad's child? I couldn't find an answer no matter how much I thought about it, so I called the number Mom gave me. The person who answered the phone introduced himself as a lawyer. His name was Mr. Williams.
Mom told me to call you. Yes, I understand. I'd like to discuss things further with you.
So, I went to the lawyer's office as directed. There, I learned the meaning of Mom's words. And I found out about my true birth. At first, I was in complete disbelief, but it seemed that Mom and Chloe had kept it hidden for my sake. After that, I started living on my own. Thanks to Mr. Williams, I was able to live comfortably. 8 years quickly passed since Mom's revelation. And in these 8 years, there were some happy moments too. Chloe graduated from college and started living on her own. Chloe? What's up?
Sorry for the sudden call. It seems Dad found out where you live. What?
Oh, and just so you know, neither Mom nor I said anything to him.
I understand.
Actually, even after living separately, Chloe and Mom kept in touch with me. Of course, they kept it a secret from Dad.
So, does that mean he's coming here? Probably.
I see. All right, it's time for some payback, don't you think?
What?
I'm able to live like this because of you and Mom, right?
That might be true, but...
So, let me repay you a little. And there's the matter with Mom too.
That's true. I did leave the house in a hurry. It's not your fault, Chloe.
A week after Chloe's call. As she predicted, Dad showed up at my condo. The doorbell rang, and I went to answer it. Hello?
It's been a while, Brittany.
What are you doing here?
How can a cripple like you afford to live in a high-rise condo like this?
Well, why don't you tell me?
How dare you talk to your dad like that?
Glancing behind Dad, I saw Mom standing there looking apologetic. From her expression, I could tell she had been struggling even after I left.
Shall I explain it to you then? What?
I began explaining to Dad how I was able to live like this. As I spoke, he started hurling insults at Mom.
What is this about? I knew nothing about it. I intended to tell you at first.
But when you found out Brittany had a disability, you made a disgusted face.
Of course I did. Who wants to raise someone else's disabled child?
I remembered the shock I felt when Mr. Williams told me. He explained that I was the child of Mom's best friend. My real dad had died in an accident, and my real mom was terminally ill with only a short time left to live. That's when they turned to my current mom. In other words, I was adopted. Moreover, my real mom had left a substantial amount of money to ensure I wouldn't face hardships. The house I now live in had originally belonged to my real parents.
Blaming Mom is not right. Shut up! No, I won't. And I know about the horrible things you've done to her.
Even after I started living separately, Dad's rampages didn't stop. His aggression, which had previously been directed at me, now targeted Mom. Isn't that right? I looked to Mom for agreement. She nodded quietly.
You have no proof. None.
What if I said I do?
What?
I took out my smartphone and played a recording. It captured Dad verbally abusing Mom and even raising his hand against her. See? Do you get it now?
When did you?
Even though we lived apart, we never stopped communicating. You didn't notice, did you? Well, of course not.
Damn you!
Yelling won't help. We have plenty of evidence. You know what this means, right?
What are you planning?
I gave Mom a signal with my eyes.
I'm leaving you. What?
It's only natural. But don't worry, Mom will be living here with me.
You can't do this to me.
I don't care about your opinion, Dad. He probably didn't know, but this had been planned for a long time.
You little cripple, you think you can get away with this?
Dad, in his rage, seemed ready to resort to violence. At that moment,
Stop it!
A voice came from the back of the house.
Who the hell are you? This is my husband. Husband? Nice to meet you. I'm Aaron, her husband.
Dad, stunned, lowered his raised hand.
Did you know about this too?
Mom nodded. Of course. Even Chloe knows.
You did this without your parents' consent. How dare you?
I'm an adult now. There's no issue. Anyway, why don't you leave? It would have been great if he left then, but of course, he wasn't giving up that easily. Wait a minute. You've inherited more than just this house, haven't you?
And? As your parent, I have a right to that inheritance.
What nonsense. He had no such right. Seeing his desperate face almost made me laugh.
What's so funny? You're just so off the mark.
Dad stomped his foot in frustration. I'm sure you'll have a tough time ahead. Good luck. You'll also have to deal with the compensation from the divorce trial. Oh, and I've already talked to Grandpa and Grandma. So don't bother trying to rely on them.
You planned all of this?
Dad suddenly looked very subdued. Maybe he finally realized his mistakes. We have nothing more to talk about. Goodbye.
Wait, please. I'm sorry.
Dad made a sincere apology, something I had never seen before. It made me wonder what it felt like to swallow your pride and apologize to someone you've always disregarded. But no matter what he said, my feelings wouldn't change. There's no point in doing that, just leave already.
Even after all this?
Yes. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. I have evidence, and you might get arrested. My words seemed to scare Victor, and he fled the scene. I exhaled deeply, feeling the tension release. Good job.
Thank you. I was really nervous.
But are you sure this is okay?
Living here together?
Yes. It's not a problem. We talked about it and decided together. Right?
That's right. Here, we have freedom.
Then, I told Chloe about the outcome.
I'm so glad.
See? It turned out okay, didn't it?
I really wanted to come over there too.
Your support is enough. Come visit us sometime. Yes, I'll do that. Thus, Diana and I were freed from Victor's curse. There was still one final step, but we celebrated that night with a toast. After that, Diana and I visited our lawyer, Mr. Williams. Since we already had all the evidence, things proceeded smoothly.
Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. It's my job after all.
Please, make sure my dad gets punished.
The police will handle the assault, but I'll take care of the compensation in the divorce. 2 weeks after our consultation, Victor and Diana's divorce was finalized. Now, Diana wouldn't have to endure Victor's insults or abuse anymore. I was truly happy about that. After the divorce was finalized, we moved all of Diana's belongings to our house.
Thank you so much.
It's okay. This is the least I can do. Besides, I'll keep repaying you for all the help you've given me.
You don't have to do that.
I want to, so it's fine. Diana joined us, and a new chapter of our lives began. Chloe also started visiting whenever she could.
Finally, we have peace.
Thank you, Chloe, for everything.
Of course. Even though we're not blood related, Brittany, you're my only precious sister.
Yes. I noticed Diana had a concerned look on her face. What's wrong?
Oh, it's a call from Victor.
A call? Let me see. I took Diana's smartphone and answered the call. I was wrong. Please come back. Diana is not coming back. Is that you, Brittany? I was not myself before. Please give me another chance.
Sorry, that's impossible. Don't call again.
I hung up and blocked his number, then returned the phone to Diana.
Was everything okay?
Absolutely. So, don't worry. Apparently, Victor quit his job. I don't know what happened after that. He must be living alone somewhere. But it doesn't matter where he is or what he's doing anymore. On the other hand, we are enjoying happy days together as a family. I've never felt this liberated in my life. I want to continue walking a happy path with my family. Well, Nancy. What's with that getup? Patricia, the mother of my daughter Betty's classmate, looked me up and down in my work clothes and said that in a mocking tone.
This is Betty's mom? Poor people are so miserable, not even getting a day off,
said Patricia's husband, Mark, looking down on me with contemptuous eyes. About Betty's mom.
What? Did that pauper say something rude? What? You don't know her? All this time, you should realize that you two are the ones being rude.
When the governor said that in exasperation.
Huh? What do you mean?
Mark replied, seeming not to understand. So the governor said irritably,
You know nothing, do you? Nancy is well known in this area, no, in this whole region, for being good at her job.
I'm Nancy, 32 years old. I'm a single mother with a daughter who's in 6th grade. When I was 20, I gave birth to a baby girl with my ex-husband Paul, whom I had been dating since high school, and we named her Betty. We were still young, so we started our married life with a lot of support from those around us, but we had no time to enjoy being married and struggled with parenting our first child. Paul, who loved driving, got a job as a truck driver after graduating from high school. At first, he drove short and medium distances, but gradually he was entrusted with long-distance routes that came with allowances. Even though Paul initially helped out a little with housework and childcare, he was never good at that kind of thing to begin with, and when he was tired from work, he stopped helping out at all. Before I knew it, I was always doing everything from housework to childcare all by myself. Neither of us had any emotional leeway, and we started arguing frequently about housework and childcare. We lost the feelings we had for each other when we were dating. All we did was fight in front of Betty, never showing her our smiles as parents. I started to think that Betty wouldn't be happy in a home like that, so I told Paul how I felt, and it turned out he had been thinking the same thing. After many discussions, Paul and I got divorced when Betty was 2 years old. Paul agreed to pay as much child support as he could afford out of his salary, which he has continued to do to this day. After the divorce, I decided to work to make a living, but the first thing I needed to do was find a daycare center where I could leave Betty. Daycare centers vary in terms of hours, fees, and other conditions, and the daycare center you can use also changes depending on your job. After some thought, I decided to find a job first and ask my mom to watch Betty until I could get her into a daycare center. My dad passed away from illness when I was 2, and since then, my mom has raised me as a single mother. When I was 15, my mom remarried a very kind man. He became my stepfather, and as a teenager, I didn't get used to him right away, but he was a warm person who embraced me gently as if I were his own child. He wasn't a very large man, but he worked operating heavy machinery at construction sites. When I was still in high school, I had to deliver something to my dad's workplace at my mom's request, and that was the first time I saw him operating the heavy machinery with both dynamism and delicacy. At that moment, I thought my dad looked so cool and felt proud. I job hunted and started working as a building cleaner, searched for many daycare centers, and somehow managed to get Betty into one that met our needs. Having struggled to find a daycare center, I realized anew just how much mothers with young children agonize over balancing work and childcare. One day, construction began on a vacant lot next to where I was working as a cleaner, and it suddenly reminded me of my dad's job. Strangely, I found myself wanting to try operating heavy machinery too. I noticed my heart dancing with a feeling akin to certainty that I could do it. From then on, other options vanished from my mind, and I headed to my dad's place that very day. When I asked my dad one question after another, my eyes shining, about wanting to become a heavy equipment operator and where to start, he was surprised at first but happily taught me all sorts of things. I also learned that the number of female heavy equipment operators has been increasing lately, which made me even more motivated. First, I got my CDL license, and my dad introduced me to a construction company run by an acquaintance of his, where I was able to get a job as an office worker and heavy equipment operator. Until Betty started elementary school, it was difficult to go to job sites due to the hours of her preschool, so I worked at a materials storage site operating a shovel car to process leftover soil. Meanwhile, I acquired licenses for various types of heavy equipment and then gradually gained experience by going to job sites. However, after several years with that company, they changed their policy and stopped taking on-site construction jobs. Wanting to improve my skills, I made the bold decision to go independent and become a sole proprietor. As I continued working on-site, I discovered a new world as a heavy equipment operator and found myself stepping into it. Betty joined the marching band at her elementary school. A marching band is a group that plays instruments like trumpets while walking, sometimes parading with dance teams and color guards. Our elementary school has won the state competition in the past and is fairly well known in the community. By the way, the color guard is the part that has the role of colorfully expressing aspects that can't be fully conveyed through just music and marching by waving flags and dancing.
Mom, I want to join the marching band, Betty said.
The marching band? I replied. When Betty said she wanted to join after being invited by a friend, I couldn't afford to buy her an instrument yet, but my job was relatively stable and I thought I could manage the cost of lessons somehow, so I agreed to let her try it for a year for now. More than anything, I felt guilty for making Betty feel lonely because I'm usually working, so I had a strong desire to happily support anything she wanted to do.
Betty, if you're going to do it, put your heart into it,
I told her.
Yeah, I'll do my best,
she replied with a happy smile. Though she joined the marching band after being invited, before long Betty became even more passionate about it than the friend who invited her, and she cheerfully practiced with her bandmates every day. At our elementary school, it's become a tradition for the marching band to do an entrance parade and a performance on the field at the opening ceremony of the sports day every year. About 6 months before the sports day, as the 6th graders graduated and advanced to the next grade, it was time to select a drum major to lead the entire marching band. The drum major is chosen from the oldest 6th graders, so Betty's grade was eligible.
We'll be choosing a new drum major again this year, so everyone think about who you want to select.
The students seemed to view the selection of a new drum major as a kind of festival, constantly talking about it before and after the vote, saying things like, "Who are you choosing?"
"It's a secret, we're not supposed to say."
The drum major is essentially the leader, conducting with a baton that has a metal ball on the end and sometimes twirling the baton to perform. The position also requires social skills, leadership, and athleticism. It's a role everyone aspires to. They also have the important responsibility of organizing the members and formation of each instrument section and the stage composition. The subdrum major, who is also a candidate for the next drum major, is chosen from both 5th and 6th graders. Last year, Betty was selected when she became a 5th grader. At our elementary school, The selection method for both drum major and subdrum major involves a vote by all band members, with the final decision made by the advisor's judgment. The student chosen is considered to have the deep trust of the band members and be recognized as having the aptitude for leadership.
Mom, guess what? I was chosen as subdrum major, Betty told me.
Having been honored with the position of subdrum major, Betty earnestly took on the role of supporting the drum major in leading the band members. And so, the vote was held to choose the drum major from among Betty and her fellow 6th graders, but something different from usual happened this year. Dorothy, the daughter of a locally famous company president, suddenly joined as a 6th grader and barged her way into the drum major candidates. Dorothy had joined the marching band in 6th grade with the sole purpose of becoming drum major. Patricia, the president's wife, insisted that Dorothy was qualified to be drum major because she was a 6th grader, forcefully putting Dorothy among the candidates. To the advisor, who was at a loss with how to handle such audacity,
Dorothy has a great personality, she's cute, and she's popular with everyone, so it's practically decided that she'll be chosen, right? Betty is a bit plain, or should I say, has an air of poverty about her, you know?
Patricia reportedly declared Dorothy's victory with full confidence. However, it's said that Dorothy often acted arrogantly towards her classmates, boasting about being the daughter of the president of a major local real estate company. If she didn't like someone, she would use her friends to ostracize them or spread rumors, constantly engaging in misdeeds. It's hard to say that someone like Dorothy is popular. Naturally, Dorothy, not only a newcomer but also someone who behaved that way, didn't gain the trust of those around her and was not chosen as the marching band leader. In the end, Betty was selected as drum major from the 6th grade, and a reliable and popular girl from 5th grade was chosen as subdrum major. A few days later, a meeting was held to report the decision on drum major and explain the marching band's plans for the new year. I was able to attend as my work schedule allowed. Patricia, whose expectations were betrayed, burst into the classroom, ran straight to the advisor without even glancing at those around her.
It's ridiculous that Dorothy wasn't chosen. There must have been some unfair play. Did Betty give everyone something?
And she frantically expressed her opinion. Unable to ignore such offensive remarks, I interjected.
Now, Patricia, isn't that rude to say, no matter what? I didn't raise Betty to do something like that. Oh my, having a poor girl as drum major will ruin the marching band's glory up until now. Shouldn't it be natural for her to decline, knowing her place?
Patricia said something even more insulting. Feeling I absolutely couldn't let this humiliation of Betty stand, I tried to argue back.
That's not true. There was no unfair play. Betty isn't that kind of child, and we held a proper vote that was open for all to see during the ballot counting.
But the advisor clearly stated for me. At that.
So then why wasn't Dorothy chosen? You make the final decision, right, teacher? Why didn't you choose Dorothy?
Patricia barraged the advisor with questions.
Well, of course, the voting results showed that Betty won by a landslide. And Betty has the leadership necessary for a drum major. More than anything, she has the trust of her peers. Plus, Betty is on the taller side, so everyone can see her conducting easily, which makes the band itself look better too.
The advisor regretted saying too much, even if it was the truth, but Patricia turned beet red and shouted.
What did you say? So you're saying Dorothy isn't trusted by others, she's short and looks bad? Oh, no. That's not what I meant at all. There are many other kids who weren't chosen too. Not being selected doesn't mean they're inferior.
The advisor tried to smooth things over, but Patricia said,
That's enough. We'll continue this discussion another time.
With that, she left in a huff without participating in the meeting. The other parents exchanged glances, some looking displeased, and for a moment the room was in an uproar. But the advisor took control and proceeded with the meeting matter-of-factly, so the roughly 90-minute meeting ended in a calm atmosphere as if the earlier commotion had never happened. However, after that, things that seemed like harassment from someone started happening to Betty and I. First, the baton Betty used for practice went missing, so she couldn't practice. After searching all over, it was found placed in the garbage dump in the backyard. Then rumors spread that Betty had cheated to become drum major. In a horrible case, the marching band practice schedule changed, but only Betty wasn't informed. Various forms of harassment causing real harm occurred. It got so bad that when I consulted the advisor, he said, "This is troubling. There's no evidence, so we can't specify who's responsible. But I'll keep a closer eye out too." During band practice, he apparently told the kids,
"Lately, someone has been bothered by malicious harassment. If anyone has information, please report to the teacher. This is absolutely unacceptable."
I could only hope it would serve as at least a small warning to the perpetrators. And such incidents started happening not only to Betty, but to me as well. As a sole proprietor heavy equipment operator, I take on-site jobs from construction companies and such. But a little after the uproar at that meeting, multiple companies started saying they wanted to cancel their orders with me. Even when I asked the reason for the cancellation, none of the companies would give me a clear answer. I became convinced there must be a mastermind behind this, so I decided to consult my dad, who has many long-standing connections in the industry. When I explained the current situation in detail, my dad's expression changed, realizing it was no trivial matter. He agreed to take action too. Even amidst such unsettling days, Betty, looking forward to conducting the marching band she loved, diligently practiced with the members every day. She also stayed late by herself to practice the drum major's baton performance, a highlight of the marching band. And finally, the day before the sports festival arrived. I had been really looking forward to the marching band parade at the opening ceremony, but as bad luck would have it, there was trouble at the site I was in charge of. I had to go to work from early morning to deal with it. I hoped to make it in time for the 9:30 a.m. opening ceremony, but depending on the site conditions, I might not be able to see Betty's performance in the worst case. "Betty, I'm sorry. I might not make it to the opening ceremony tomorrow," I said, feeling terribly guilty. "It can't be helped, it's for work. I know you're doing your best for me, Mom." Surely Betty wants me to see her as drum major, yet she says something so grown-up like that. "I'm really sorry. But if work finishes early, I might still make it in time." "Yeah." Betty nods, looking a little less cheerful. "I'll call from the company when it's time for you to wake up. I'll make breakfast and your lunch. I feel bad having you go alone, but make sure you lock up properly." I instruct Betty, confirming each point one by one. On the day of, when I got to the work site, the trouble seemed likely to be resolved sooner than I expected, which reassured me. However, even so, I'd be cutting it close to make the opening ceremony. I definitely didn't have time to stop by the house to change. Deciding that making it to the opening ceremony took priority, I rushed to the school straight from the site, still in my work clothes. Somehow I arrived at the school a little before the opening ceremony started, but there was a frantic atmosphere and the teachers seemed on edge for some reason. I quickly found out why. I overheard someone nearby saying that apparently the student in the drum major position still hadn't arrived, and at this rate the marching band's entrance would be delayed. Why? Betty should have gone to school properly. There's no way she still wouldn't be here. I hurriedly tried calling home, but of course no one answered.
What should I do? Something must have happened to Betty.
There's no way Betty would be late on such an important day. My knees trembled and I felt like collapsing on the spot. Just then, someone spoke to me in a crude, tactless, loud voice.
Oh my, Nancy, what's the matter? In that getup?
It was Patricia who said that mockingly, looking me up and down in my work clothes. Standing next to Patricia was her husband Mark, the president of some company.
This is that Betty's mom? Poor people are so miserable, not even getting a day off.
Mark said, looking down on me with contemptuous eyes. But now wasn't the time to deal with the likes of them. I didn't even have the energy to feel annoyed. Utterly oblivious to the mood, Patricia gloated triumphantly.
I wonder what's going on with Betty. For a drum major, how slovenly of her not to show up even this late.
She has no right to conduct.
Isn't it great that Dorothy is here? The teacher should have chosen Dorothy from the start. Well, once they see Dorothy conduct, everyone will have no choice but to acknowledge her ability, Mark chimed in.
Patricia and Mark spoke as if Dorothy would be serving as drum major.
Huh?
I found out later that on the day before the sports festival, the parents of the 5th grade sub-drum major had contacted the advisor and suddenly said they wanted their child to resign from the position. When asked the reason, they simply said it was because their child no longer wanted to do it, and they wanted to respect the child's feelings. At that very moment, Patricia conveniently visited the teacher and apparently made a point of saying that Dorothy had been practicing for the drum major role and was ready for the actual performance.
It would be a big problem if there was no replacement if Betty came down with a cold on the day of the sports festival, right? I think Dorothy is the perfect fit,
she said, pressuring him to make Dorothy the sub-drum major. With no time to redo the selection process, the teacher had no choice but to appoint Dorothy as sub-drum major, strictly as a stand-in for the drum major. I found it hard to believe that the sub-drum major's resignation, Dorothy's appointment as sub-drum major, and Betty not having arrived yet were all unrelated. Just as I was about to pursue the truth behind this, my cell phone rang. I answered the phone nervously.
Hello, what? I'm at the school right now.
The call was from Betty's homeroom teacher. Apparently, Betty was with the governor and the mayor, and she was looking for me. The teacher seemed relieved to hear I was already at the school. He said he would relay that to the governor for now and contact me again later, then hung up. Why? Betty was with the governor and the mayor? And looking for me? I was at a loss, my mind blank. In any case, it seemed clear that something had happened. A few minutes later, I got another call on my cell phone, this time from the marching band advisor.
I just heard from Betty's homeroom teacher that Betty is on her way to school in the governor's car.
Even more confused by this, all I could manage to say was,
Betty is what? Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for your help.
According to what I heard later, people had apparently commented that it was unusual for Betty, who always arrived early for marching band practice, not to show up for a while this morning. Then, with no word from her, less than 10 minutes before the opening ceremony, Betty still hadn't arrived. The advisor finally thought something was off and called my house, but no one answered. He was looking up my cell phone number to try calling it next when Betty's homeroom teacher phoned to inform him that Betty was with some unexpected people. Those people turned out to be the governor and the mayor. The governor, who had graduated from this elementary school, had managed to make time to come to the sports festival by car with the mayor, whose schedule happened to allow it. On the way, they spotted a girl who looked somewhat familiar crying and running in the opposite direction of the school. They stopped the car and called out to her. When they asked what was going on, the girl said,
My mom is in trouble. I have to go home.
And tried to run off again. That girl turned out to be Betty. Why did the governor know Betty's face? Well, I had previously had the opportunity to meet directly with the governor and the mayor, and I had brought Betty with me. Betty had left a bright impression on them. They also remembered that Betty attended the governor's elementary school alma mater. The governor, upon hearing that Betty's mom was in trouble, thought it sounded serious. He first called the school and asked them to get in touch with me, intending to decide the next steps based on the outcome. And that's why the teacher had called me earlier. When the governor learned from Betty's homeroom teacher's return call that I was safe and already at the school, he told Betty,
Betty, your mom is okay. She's already at the school.
When he asked why she thought her mom was in trouble,
Lisa told me that my mom is in trouble, so I should go home.
Betty, having calmed down a bit, apparently explained. Then, remembering the sports festival entrance parade, Betty started to panic, saying,
What should I do? I'm going to be late for the opening ceremony.
The governor let Betty ride along in his car and brought her to the school. So, the advisor, having been informed by Betty's homeroom teacher, told me that Betty was on her way here. I felt so thankful to God. While this was happening, the scheduled start time for the opening ceremony arrived, and the teachers began to bustle about. Then suddenly, a whistle pierced the sky. Next, the sound of drums began to steadily beat out a rhythm.
Now, let's begin the opening ceremony. It's time for the marching band to enter.
The teacher made a cheerful announcement over the microphone, and the marching band entered through the school gate. I saw Betty confidently swinging the conductor's baton.
How?
Patricia and Mark were dumbfounded. Dorothy wasn't at the head of the marching band. She was walking in the back, waving a flag baton with a sulky look on her face. Her movements didn't match the rhythm of the music. It seemed she was just swinging it randomly. Betty, the drum major, had assigned Dorothy the color guard part, but apparently the sullen Dorothy hadn't practiced properly. Perhaps she had been certain she would get to conduct as drum major today, but her expectations were dashed. As the marching band entered the schoolyard, they moved vertically and horizontally across the schoolyard stage while playing their instruments, putting on a performance that visually entertained the audience as well. Well, there was one member disrupting the formation. But still, overall, the marching band's performance was magnificent. Seeing Betty conducting with a proud look, I couldn't help but tear up. I remembered how Betty had diligently practiced despite various interferences. Patricia and Mark had such frustrated looks on their faces, but as the opening ceremony ended, they noticed someone approaching and addressed them in a fawning voice.
Oh, isn't it the governor and the mayor?
Long time no see. Are you here to observe the sports festival today? Being the president of a major real estate company in this area, he was probably acquainted with the governor and mayor. The governor said, Yes. Giving them a glance.
Actually, my daughter was supposed to conduct the marching band, but a pauper got carried away and it turned into a dull parade.
Then he said with a terribly displeased tone. The governor and mayor ignored Mark and Patricia and called out to me with a smile.
Wow, Betty did a wonderful job conducting.
Yes, she's tall so she looks good, and she skillfully brought everyone together. Seeing the two of them praising Betty, Mark and Patricia looked more surprised that the governor and mayor knew me than feeling bitter.
Governor, mayor, I'm so sorry that Betty caused you trouble.
What?
What happened?
Patricia made a puzzled face.
Yes, someone told Betty the wrong information that I was in trouble, and they found Betty running home and gave her a ride to school.
Patricia's face began to change color.
No, it was no trouble at all. I'm glad she made it in time.
The governor said that, then furrowed his brow.
Still, I just can't get it off my mind, someone telling Betty something like that.
The governor and mayor took issue with the incident of Lisa telling Betty that her mom was in trouble so she should go home. They immediately brought it up with the school, and when the homeroom teacher questioned Lisa, she confessed.
Dorothy told me to say that,
revealing the truth of the matter. Apparently, just as Betty was about to arrive at school, Lisa told her that, causing her to panic and start running home.
So that's what happened. Even if it was done by a child, we can't overlook this,
the governor said, glaring at Mark and Patricia.
No, there must be some mistake. Mark made excuses.
That's right.
Maybe that Lisa girl is lying, Patricia chimed in.
The governor looked at them with disdain as they made excuses, then said,
Anyway. Why yes?
Mark straightened his back and responded.
About Betty's mom, Nancy.
Huh, did that pauper say something rude?
What? You don't know her? If you'd been listening, you should realize that you two are the ones being rude.
When the governor said that in exasperation.
Huh? What do you mean?
Mark replied, seeming not to understand. So the governor said irritably.
That's not the point. Nancy is well known for being good at her job in this area. No, even outside the region.
Yes, she's truly an ally to working women.
And her contributions to disaster relief are amazing too.
Mark and Patricia turned pale at their words.
No, I still have a long way to go, I said.
It was partly out of modesty, but I really do think I still have a lot to learn, so I felt overwhelmed being praised so much and answered that way. After becoming an independent heavy equipment operator, I took on 2 challenges while gaining on-site experience. One was starting a heavy equipment operator dispatch service so that women like me, with young children and unable to work as we'd like, could take on-site jobs even for short periods. The other was an activity during disasters called heavy equipment volunteering. Lately, I often hear about the 72-hour wall in disasters that once 3 days have passed since a disaster occurs, the survival rate drops drastically and rescue becomes a race against time. Now, small heavy equipment like shovel cars are gaining attention as a powerful ally in this. I learned about the existence of heavy equipment volunteers, who respond to requests and needs from disaster victims gathered at volunteer centers in affected areas to support those areas. As a heavy equipment operator myself, I couldn't sit still, wanting to help somehow, so I decided to participate in heavy equipment volunteering. I also asked professionals who could teach disaster area-specific heavy equipment techniques to hold workshops and such for dispatch members who wanted to go to affected areas like I did. I'm grateful that the things I took on were appreciated by many working women and people in disaster-stricken areas, and were even featured in local media at times. It's still fresh in my memory how I had the honor of having a discussion with the governor and mayor then. The governor added to the pale-faced Mark.
Not just this incident with Betty, you'd better regret your own words and actions.
Hearing those words from the governor, Mark and Patricia trembled. There have apparently been constant bad rumors about Mark's company lately. It seems the buildings and houses constructed by his company had many issues, and among the buildings damaged and collapsed in disasters, a high percentage were built by Mark's company. The state also grew suspicious that there was something behind this data and launched a large-scale investigation. It later came to light that Mark's company was colluding with the construction companies it ordered from, receiving donations and giving them priority orders, and effectively condoning the construction company's shoddy work on earthquake resistance, foundation work, material procurement, and so on. His company is being sued. As for the sudden cancellation of my work, my dad, who has worked at construction companies for many years and is well known in the industry, investigated and found that Mark and Patricia had a grudge over the children and pressured the construction companies through Mark's company not to place orders with my company. Mark's company apparently often demanded donations on the condition of placing orders, and interfered by not allowing companies to participate in bidding if they didn't comply. Companies and sole proprietors harmed by Mark's company, including myself, are coming together to sue for damages. Regarding the harassment of Betty and the pressure on the child who resigned as sub-drum major, many witnesses came forward. Even Dorothy couldn't make excuses anymore and could only hang her head, pale-faced. As a result, Dorothy could no longer stay at the school and had no choice but to move to an area where no one knew them. Recently, Betty has been saying that when she grows up, she wants to become a firefighter or police officer.
I want to help lots of people like Mom does, and I want to make sure there are no bad people.
I had always felt guilty for making Betty feel lonely since she was little, but children grow up watching their parents' backs. I realized it was really good that I worked hard wanting to show Betty my hardworking self. Remembering when Betty was small, my goal is to continue the current dispatch business that allows female heavy equipment operators to work even for short periods, so that women with children and women looking for ways to do what they can for others can be even a little more active. Eventually, I want to make it a company with a daycare. And for women who want to participate in small heavy equipment volunteering, I'm thinking of providing more and more places for education to improve their skills. From now on, for Betty's sake too, I want to keep moving forward true to my beliefs and shining bright. Michael's baby turned 1 month old, and a celebration was planned. I was invited to Regina's parents' home.
How adorable! Just like an angel.
The moment I reached out to the baby's tiny fist, Regina shouted,
"Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger."
I withdrew my hand in surprise and protested. "I'm Michael's mother. I'm the grandma of this child." "So?" Regina smiled mischievously.
"To me, you're a stranger. You're just someone unnecessary once I've gotten the congratulatory money."
"That's terrible."
"You're stingy, just like your deli. It doesn't seem like we'll need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends. Don't show your gloomy face around us again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family."
I was momentarily taken aback, but quickly responded with a smile.
"All right then."
Leaving me at the entrance, Regina went back inside. In my heart, I declared war. If that's the attitude you're going to take, I have my plans too. You'll regret this later. I am Margaret, a 55-year-old housewife. Shortly after my eldest son, Michael, started elementary school, I lost my husband. Determined to support Michael through college, I decided to work harder. I quit my part-time job and, using the money my husband had left, started a small delicatessen. Thanks to working tirelessly every day, the deli gradually became successful. And I was able to send Michael to college. When Michael was a child, I was too busy with daily life. We hardly ever had the luxury to go to theme parks or play in the park on weekends like other families. I felt guilty for not being able to give him more attention, fearing I was a failure as a parent. But Michael grew up to be a compassionate person, which relieved me. Michael, who landed a job at a big company, moved out to live on his own. Though he lived in the city, he would come to visit with a bright smile during long weekends. When he got used to his job, he called me one day saying, "There's someone I want you to meet," which excited me. However, I felt anxious as well as happy when Michael brought the young lady home. She was the daughter of the well-known Tucker Industries. I was nervous, thinking it was about making Michael a successor. But it turned out her cousin was set to take over and was already the vice president. Michael's wife, Regina, graduated from a university that only heiresses attend and is currently practicing to be a housewife at her parents' home. Nice to meet you. Let's get along well, Margaret. The first time we met, she grabbed my hand and vigorously shook it. I could tell she was well-bred from her dining manners and behavior. But her unrestrained and flashy personality made me feel we wouldn't get along. But since Michael chose her, I wanted to get along well. I decided to make an effort to become closer. However, my feelings were quickly trampled upon after they got married. Regina was chatty and had a bright personality. That sounds nice, but her conversations revolved around neighborhood gossip, celebrity news, and speaking ill of acquaintances. The biggest issue was the timing of her visits. She would show up unannounced right when I got back from work and started preparing dinner. Naturally, I ended up inviting her to eat. I don't have any morning sickness at all. I can eat anything. Beer's okay too.
You shouldn't drink alcohol if you're pregnant. Really? Is that so?
Regina's surprised look made me anxious. When she told me she was pregnant, I was as happy as if it were my own news. But Regina seemed to lack awareness as a pregnant woman or had little prior knowledge. And despite claiming she could eat anything, her likes and dislikes were strong. She disliked fish for being too fishy and would only eat meat from certain brands. For dessert after dinner, she wanted expensive fruits like Japanese shine muscat grapes and muskmelons. Moreover, she had a habit of rating the meals after eating.
65 points. Not great.
93 points. Could use more spice.
Today is 100 points. Amazing, you passed. Congratulations.
I forced a smile at her full-faced grin. Regina, why do you rate every meal? She said with a broad smile. I'm doing you a favor, practicing. If you can't satisfy your daughter-in-law, your deli might as well shut down.
I've been running it for 20 years in downtown, you know.
My sarcasm didn't land.
It only takes a moment to go under. I wouldn't want to take care of an unemployed Margaret. So, you better work hard.
I'm only 55, yet she treats me like an old lady. Though she seems well-meaning, her constant superior attitude and offensive remarks are infuriating. Having these exchanges 4 or 5 times a week is exhausting. And using her pregnancy as an excuse, she won't even clear the table after eating. Lounging on the sofa with her phone instead. She wouldn't budge, so when I tried to relax with a beer and TV, she complained.
Margaret, that's terrible. Drinking in front of me, is this harassment? Go to your room. I just want to enjoy a drink while watching TV dramas.
Why don't you watch on your mobile phone? You're so inconsiderate. I want to watch on a big screen, not a tiny one. And why do I have to take this from my daughter-in-law? When my irritation reached its peak, Regina packs up Michael's share of dinner, smiles, and leaves. Exhausted, I bathe early and head to bed. Casually asking how they manage weekend dinners, she unabashedly says they use delivery. Deli items, or ready meals.
I'm not good at housework. But I want Michael to eat delicious meals. It would really help if Margaret could prepare weekend dinners too.
I ignored her audacious request. I'm happy Regina comes to visit, but I'm also tired from work. Maybe just once a week would be better? When I couldn't take it anymore and complained to Michael over the phone, this was his response.
Regina's morning sickness is really bad, and she can't do anything at home. I'm swamped with overtime, so I can only help out with the chores on weekends. She's lying down all the time at your place, right?
Having Mom watch over Regina makes me feel relieved. It's her first pregnancy, so she's probably anxious. Please overlook her rudeness.
All right, I understand.
It seems Regina plays the role of a frail pregnant woman in front of Michael. I strongly wanted to show him how she lies on the sofa, laughing while watching videos. But doing so would disappoint kind-hearted Michael and make him feel guilty towards me. Regina is taking advantage of me, knowing I wouldn't do such a thing. That part again irritates me. Though I'm not fond of Regina, I'm looking forward to meeting my grandchild and want to maintain a good relationship with Michael as before. So, I decided not to meddle too much and warmly watch over Michael and his family. I shouldn't impose my opinions on naming the grandchild or insist on living together because he's the eldest son. Instead, when Regina asked, I helped with buying baby supplies, accompanied her to prenatal checkups, and even to church to pray, serving as a dedicated bag carrier. As a grandma, I was eager to help in any way possible. But Regina's attitude grew increasingly overbearing. Lately, she even orders large furniture to be delivered to our home, right in front of me.
Margaret, what do you think of this? It's expensive.
Shall I buy it for you? Offering to buy it was my downfall. After that, she started asking for expensive baby items one after another.
Imported items are more stylish, right? It would be really nice to have a matching set. Regina, why not rent items that are only used for a short period? There are affordable and durable domestic brands too.
I couldn't help but suggest, and Regina glared at me sharply.
Margaret, don't you want to give your grandchild the best?
There's no end to luxury. So, you just don't want to spend the money, huh? Oh, how dreadful. Dad or Mom would easily shell out $100,000. I thought, why not ask your dad or mom then? But it seems she has no intention of relying on her parents.
Margaret, you can't take your money to the grave. Let's spend it generously without being stingy.
Her words were so rude that I was at a loss for words. I felt my face heat up with anger, and I almost yelled back, "Mind your own business." No, that's not right. Causing a scene would put Michael in a difficult position, which would be unfair to him. Struggling to control my anger, I tried to speak calmly. Anyway, let's use rental services for things we can. Savings have their limits.
All right, I understand.
Regina reluctantly agreed, though she seemed dissatisfied. My relief was short-lived when Michael called me in the evening.
Regina was asking Mom for various baby items? Yes, well.
Sorry. I thought she was buying them with the money I've been giving her. I was surprised when I saw the sudden increase in high-brand baby clothes and toys. I could tell Michael was confused over the phone.
Did she make you spend a lot? Should I pay you back?
No, it's fine. I was planning to buy her some things anyway. Really sorry. Regina wanted a girl, and when we found out at the hospital, she got carried away. I thought it was more than just getting carried away, but I refrained from speaking ill of Regina and stopped arguing. It's nice that it's a girl as she wanted.
Being a lady, she just has a different sense of money from us. But I don't think she means any harm. I'll tell her not to burden Mom anymore.
Please do. After hanging up, I sighed. I understand the desire to gather cute baby items. Still, it would be common sense to show a little restraint. After that, Michael must have talked to her because Regina stopped asking for expensive baby items altogether. I wished she would stop coming altogether, but Regina kept showing up as if nothing happened. Lately, she seemed to have shifted her strategy to asking for small amounts of money. thinking if not large sums, then small ones might work.
Look, I can't work because I'm pregnant, so I have no money. But I'm scared Michael will lose interest if I don't keep up appearances. It's okay for someone old like Margaret, but I'm young and want to be loved.
Of course, I had no intention of giving her a penny.
Why don't you ask Michael for more allowance? He'd listen, right?
I can't do that. It would sound like I'm blaming his salary. Regina pouted, snacking on some treats. Being a manager at a major company at 30, he earns more than most of his peers. But my dad earns more. Oh, sorry. The words "then ask your dad" almost slipped out, but I held back with all my might. Regina always carried a high-brand bag and wore well-tailored maternity wear. Wanting more despite getting a hefty allowance seemed too selfish. It's not that I think pregnant women shouldn't dress well or housewives should look shabby. But begging your mother-in-law for money is definitely wrong. Though I was upset, looking at Regina's swollen belly calmed my anger. Soon, I'll meet the baby. The thought of becoming a grandma soon tickles me. In that aspect, I'm thankful to Regina. When my sister-in-law, Chelsea, came over the weekend and I vented to her, she was outraged.
The worst daughter-in-law ever. She's taking advantage of you too much. Michael should speak up.
Do you think so? I smiled at Chelsea's indignation. But I think once the baby is born, her rude behavior towards me will get better.
It's not just maternity blues, it's her character. Don't get your hopes up.
Maybe. But I get along with Michael, and I don't want to ruin their marriage. Chelsea sighed in frustration.
Don't keep it all to yourself. I'm here to listen to your complaints anytime.
Thanks, Chelsea. I smiled at Chelsea. For now, let's just pray that the baby is born safely. Eventually, Regina gave birth without any issues. I wanted to meet the baby, but since she went straight to her parents' house after being discharged, I decided to wait until Regina was feeling better. Michael, stopping by Regina's parents' house after work, sends me pictures of the baby daily. I can only imagine how adorable the baby must be in person, and my anticipation grows. When the baby was about a month old, Michael contacted me. Regina wants to have a baby reveal party. A reveal party? Yeah, at her parents' house, inviting relatives. Can we invite our side too? Thomas and the others are on board. That sounds good. Why not invite the same group as we did for the wedding? I'll do that. Then, I'll start reaching out. My relatives all live in the same state. They love events, so they'd be happy to come. As expected, when I informed them of the date, they all wanted to come. On the day, I arrived a bit early with a gift for the baby, intending to greet Regina's parents first. I rang the doorbell of the grand house, surrounded by a high fence, and a mature woman's voice responded. The parents were often away for work, so a housekeeper was always there. The person who came to the door must have been her. As I reached the grand entrance along the slope, Regina, in a floral dress, greeted me at the foyer, holding the innocent baby in her arms. Dad and Mom got called into sudden work, so they're not back yet. Busy even on a Sunday. I greeted and was about to enter when Regina coldly asked, "The gift for the baby?"
Oh, yes, here.
Handing the baby to the waiting housekeeper, Regina watched as I searched my bag. She snatched the envelope as I pulled it out and opened it right there. Are we checking gifts in front of everyone? Ignoring my surprise, Regina pulled out the contents and frowned in displeasure.
$1,000? That's too little. I thought that was the going rate. At least $50,000 should be in there.
Well, can't expect much from poor people. As Regina put the gift back into the envelope, the housekeeper stood behind her, holding the baby, who yawned adorably. Drawn by the baby's cuteness, I approached the housekeeper.
How adorable, just like an angel.
As I reached out to the baby's tightly clenched little fist.
Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger.
Startled by the sudden shout, I pulled my hand back. As the baby began to cry, Regina commanded the housekeeper.
Take him to his room, now.
Yes. After the housekeeper took the baby away, I protested to Regina.
I am Michael's mother. I'm the grandma of this child.
So? Regina smirked mischievously.
To me, you're a stranger. You're just someone unnecessary once I've gotten the congratulatory money. That's terrible. You're stingy, just like your deli. It doesn't seem like we'll need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends.
She fluttered her hand, shooing me away.
Thanks for your efforts. You can go home now. Don't ever show me that gloomy face again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family.
I was momentarily shocked, but quickly responded with a smile.
All right then.
Leaving me at the entrance, Regina went back inside. Her words kept swirling in my head. This was the first time in my life I had been subjected to such a terrible humiliation. Why do I have to be spoken to like this by my daughter-in-law? Clenching my fists as if my bones would crush, I declared war in my heart. If that's the attitude you're going to take, I have my plans too. You'll regret this later. When I opened the front door, my relatives were crossing the garden, coming my way.
Huh? Margaret, are you leaving already?
Regina, who came out to greet them, smiled at the puzzled relatives.
Margaret has some errands to run.
Dinner is about to arrive. You could have stayed and eaten with us. She's in a hurry.
Welcome, everyone. It seems Michael and his parents will be a little while longer. Please make yourselves comfortable in the meantime.
Regina ushered the relatives inside, closed the front door, and immediately locked it. Regina, who is good at putting on a facade, is popular with our relatives. At my husband's anniversary memorial, she went around pouring drinks for the older men, introducing herself. Despite being beautiful and wealthy, her cheerful and friendly demeanor left a very good impression. So, no one doubted Regina's words this time. I decided to resort to my last option. I headed somewhere. 2 hours later, I pressed Regina's family's doorbell again. In front of the relatives, Regina, who reluctantly let me in, whispered to me irritably.
Why did you come back?
I forgot something important.
Huh? Oh, you brought the rest of the congratulatory money. Such a small amount was indeed embarrassing.
Passing by the smirking Regina, I proceeded down the hall filled with lively voices. Opening the door, I found a spacious dining room where both families were gathered around a huge table. Although Regina's parents and Michael were nowhere to be seen, the table was laden with appetizers, and the relatives were happily sharing beer and wine.
Margaret, you came back. Come over here. We have bourbon and cocktails too. Why not have the housekeeper bring some?
I smiled at the beckoning relatives. Thank you, Trevor. But before that, I have something I'd like to reveal too.
Oh, what's that? A surprise gift?
To Regina's nonchalant question, I responded just as pleasantly.
Yes, a surprise. Now, everyone, please listen.
Clapping my hands, I silenced the chatter of the relatives and opened the voice recording app on my mobile phone, pressing play.
Don't touch the baby if you're a stranger.
Regina's shout echoed in the suddenly quiet room.
Is that Regina's voice?
The room buzzed with confusion.
Once you've given the congratulatory money, you're unnecessary. With your stingy delicatessen, we won't need anything from you in the future. So, this is where our relationship ends. Don't ever show that gloomy face again. We don't want your poverty rubbing off on our family.
No matter how many times I hear it, it's a terrible line. It seems I'm not the only one who thinks so, as the women in the family began to criticize Regina.
Even if a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law are traditionally at odds, this is too much. Margaret raised Michael alone while running the delicatessen, enduring so much. To belittle her like this is unforgivable. What's this? Just because her parents are wealthy, she acts so haughty. Such a nasty daughter-in-law.
Not just my relatives, but even Regina's family expressed their anger.
To say such things to your mother-in-law is unbelievable.
We're so sorry for our Regina. This is embarrassing for us too.
Being spoiled as a lady is one thing, but doesn't she know the difference between right and wrong? At her age, such lack of manners.
Faced with the cold stares of the relatives, Regina showed panic. Her cheeks twitching, she hurriedly tried to smooth things over.
Stop joking around, Margaret. Oh, I get it. You're jealous because Michael always defends me, so you made this up.
Regina covered her face with her hands and started to fake cry. I've tried so hard to get along with Margaret, and this is how she treats me? That's cruel. The women all had faces of disbelief. However, the men were easily deceived, looking confused and at each other.
Come on, that's too harsh. Yeah, ganging up on her. Poor thing, she started crying. Margaret, what's the meaning of this? Are you acting spitefully because Michael chose Regina? It's always the mother-in-law bullying the daughter-in-law, isn't it? Everyone knows Regina is a good girl. Don't pull such pranks, Margaret.
The men quickly sided with Regina, who must have been inwardly mocking them. Then the women exploded in anger.
Good girl? When we had a gathering at Margaret's, she refused to help in the kitchen, escaping to the dining area. Ignored calls for help, flirting with the men all the time. Right. When we were supposed to bring dishes for the meal, she lied about injuring her hand and brought store-bought items, then had the audacity to claim hers was the best.
Men are really weak against this type of girl. No eye for character. The dining room turned into a battleground of men versus women, mixing my relatives with Regina's. The once lively dining room was now filled with a tense atmosphere. As the housekeeper, flustered, brought in more beer, the doorbell rang. Chelsea entered the dining room, guided by the housekeeper. With a thick, bulging envelope of congratulatory money in her hand, catching Regina's eye. Chelsea, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Here's the congratulatory money. Oh!
Chelsea deliberately let the envelope slip from her hand, scattering its contents across the table.
Oh dear, I forgot to seal it. Sorry about that. Huh? Who's that in the picture with Regina?
A relative picked up a photo, murmuring suspiciously. Regina turned around in shock. But before Regina could collect the photos, several relatives grabbed them, exclaiming in unison.
Whoa! This looks like evidence of an affair.
It was a sight one would want to look away from. Photos captured Regina being hugged by an unknown man, kissing as she got out of a car, and entering a hotel together. As the relatives were shocked, Regina hurriedly tried to explain.
It's not what it looks like. He's just an acquaintance. He loves physical affection. And the hotel, he said he felt sick, so I accompanied him inside.
Her excuses sounded incredibly feeble. Even the men who had defended Regina were now giving her cold looks. As if delivering the final blow, Chelsea turned on a voice recorder. And a conversation between Regina and the man played out.
Can't wait for my child to be born.
It's a hassle if your wife finds out, so let's just say it's Michael's and mine, okay? Shame, but we have no choice.
He's so dumb, thinking you're just a friend.
Hilarious.
We can get away with it since Michael and I have the same blood type from our college days.
What if the child looks just like you? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Their laughter ended the recording. Regina, pale-faced, turned to Chelsea.
Why do you have this? Oh, didn't I mention? I run a private investigation firm.
Chelsea smiled slightly.
Margaret asked me to look into you because of your reckless spending and suspicious behavior. And, as expected, it turned out to be an affair. I intended to keep this to myself to avoid ruining the marriage. But seeing no change in your attitude, Regina, I thought you deserved a punishment.
Regina glared at me with a venomous look.
So, it was your doing.
As Regina lunged at me, Chelsea quickly grabbed her arm, stepping in between. Shaking off Chelsea's grip, Regina threatened in a low voice.
Remember, keep quiet about this to Michael. It would be pitiful for the child to be abandoned by Dad right after being born. Everyone agrees, right?
Her self-serving logic was astounding, but Regina desperately sought agreement from the relatives.
Michael loves children, and if he remains unaware, he'll adore this child. So, let's keep this a secret, okay?
A deep, resonant voice froze everyone, including Regina and me. Looking towards the source, we saw Michael standing at the doorway. It seemed he had entered the house with Chelsea and had been eavesdropping from the hallway.
Michael.
Approaching Regina, Michael looked at her with disdain and angrily retorted.
We used to go out for drinks, the four of us, including his wife, before Regina got pregnant. I never imagined you two were meeting alone afterwards. Laughing at me, both of you. I'm sorry. Please, don't talk about divorce.
Regina pleaded with puppy eyes, but Michael shouted back.
Of course we're getting a divorce. Insulting not just me but also my mom, unforgivable.
Michael and Regina glared at each other for a while, but eventually, Regina was the first to back down.
Fine, we can get a divorce. But I'm keeping custody of the child. I've always wanted a child.
Even at this point, she insisted as if she had done nothing wrong. What an audacious woman. The relatives watched the exchange between Regina and Michael, tense. With clasped hands and a dreamy expression, Regina began to speak.
I think the child will look like me and be incredibly beautiful. Then I'll dress her in stylish clothes and take her everywhere. A young and beautiful me with a cute daughter. We could become famous as a beautiful mother-daughter duo. She's definitely going to be a model or actress someday. I'm so glad I had a daughter. Hey, children aren't accessories. Are you raising her just to show off? That's pitiful for the child. Being a single mother is tough. Do you understand what it entails to work and raise a child?
At my words, Regina laughed in a high-pitched tone.
Who do you think I am? I'm the daughter of Tucker Industries. Unlike your delicatessen, I have endless money. My dad and mom will help, and with housekeepers and babysitters, I won't have to care for the child. I can live leisurely without working hard.
After boasting, she twisted her lips into a sneer.
Well, being from a single-parent family might be disadvantageous for school applications. So I plan to remarry someone suitable. Next time, not a company employee but a handsome CEO of an IT company. Such a man would let me have more freedom to play.
Seems like it, Mr. Tucker. Chelsea called out, and Regina's parents appeared from the back door. Shocked and speechless, Chelsea explained to us.
Actually, the Tuckers asked me to investigate Regina's behavior. They pretended to go to work today but stayed hidden, wanting to expose Regina's true nature. She had always worn a mask in front of her parents.
The Tucker couple stepped into the center of the room and bowed deeply to us. Everyone, we apologize for the disturbance Regina has caused. We don't know how to make it up to Michael and Margaret. With a pained expression, they looked at Regina. Regina, now as pale as paper, was trembling. Thomas, Regina's father, sighed deeply and lamented in a low voice. To betray Margaret like this. I'm ashamed of my own daughter.
But.
Regina suddenly looked up at her father. Moving closer with tearful eyes and a sweet tone, starting to make excuses.
I was bullied by Margaret. There's no proof, no images or recordings, but she said many mean things to me. It hurt, so I retaliated. Dad, you believe me, right?
As I was about to argue, Regina's mother, Selina, sharply said,
Lies! Margaret isn't like that.
Selina turned to me and declared,
As a fan of that shop, I can't accept what you've said. Take it back. What?
Regina, wide-eyed, listened as Thomas explained.
Selina and I are regulars at Margaret's Delicatessen. We often rely on it for business trips and dining with clients. For mom friends' home parties, we order delivery. That way, I only need to make desserts. The dishes with organic vegetables are famous for being healthy and delicious. I've known Margaret since before Michael's marriage. Haven't I mentioned it before? Eh? Really?
Regina, sweating profusely. She had likely been tuning it out. Selina, with a look of disgust, turned to Regina and said,
We've overlooked your whims to some extent until now, but this time, your behavior towards Michael and Margaret is inexcusable.
Exactly. Casually lying, demeaning others. After having an affair, you plan to raise another man's child as Michael's. That's the lowest of the low. Thomas glared at Regina with icy eyes and firmly declared,
We're disowning you as of today. What? That's troubling. What am I supposed to do starting tomorrow?
Figure it out yourself. You're 30, aren't you? How long do you plan to depend on others? Why don't you remarry him? He's the real dad, right? That's impossible. He said he wouldn't leave his wife. Oh no. I don't want to work. Regina let out a pitiful cry.
Michael, I'm sorry. It was all my fault.
Regina started to deeply apologize at mine and Michael's feet.
Margaret, I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me.
Mom, let's go home. We should get our congratulatory money back. There's no obligation to pay it to a complete stranger. Yes, let's do that. I'll take mine back too. Me too, I've lost my appetite. Michael took the envelope from the black tray, and the other relatives followed suit.
If it's not Michael's child, there's no need for a gift. Right, it's ridiculous.
I thought it was a chance to make some pocket money by exploiting the baby. As Regina crumbled to her knees, the relatives, without a glance in her direction, left the meal and the celebration came to a miserable end. The room was left with scattered dishes, half-drunk beverages, and meals, marking the desolate conclusion of the reveal party. Unwilling to work, Regina cried and refused the divorce but was persuaded by the Tuckers to reluctantly sign. The compensation for the divorce lawsuit was fronted by her parents. Afterward, Regina was kicked out of her home. She moved into an apartment with moving and initial costs borrowed from her parents, starting to live alone. The Tuckers decided they couldn't leave the baby with Regina and chose to raise it themselves. They also demanded child support and recognition from the baby's father, who complied. Regina, who had lived a life of leisure, must be struggling with her first part-time job. After all, she has to pay back her parents for the moving expenses and compensation, in addition to her living costs. Regina, now deprived of the luxury to dress fashionably or enjoy leisure activities, seems to be working desperately every day, her hair disheveled. Though Michael and I have cut ties with Regina, our relationship with the Tucker couple continues. After the reveal party, the parents came to me with an apology gift. We were wrong in how we raised her. We're terribly sorry to both Michael and Margaret. Their tearful apologies eased some of my unresolved anger. Thankfully, they continue to frequent the delicatessen, which has thrived on word of mouth and has more customers now than it did 10 years ago. I'm currently busy preparing for the opening of a second location. Michael, too, seems to have regained his spirits and is diligently working. Both of us are living busy yet fulfilling lives. Someday, if fate allows and Michael has his own child, we plan to shower that child with endless love.
What happened to you, all covered in blood?
I screamed when my 10th grade daughter, who was supposed to have gone to my husband's hometown, came home with blood streaming down her forehead. After rushing to tend to her, I immediately contacted my husband. Then, when he answered the phone, I couldn't help but yell at him.
Where are you?
I told you I'm on a business trip, didn't I? I was dumbfounded by his unexpected reply, because I clearly remember seeing off my husband and daughter for their trip to his hometown 5 days ago. There in front of me was my child, seriously injured. Seeing my confusion, my daughter revealed a shocking truth. My name is Camelia, a 40-year-old housewife, working part-time. My husband Bruno, also 40, is a salesman who visits various schools to sell high school textbooks. Trust is important, he says, and his neatly composed demeanor is just so cool. Our daughter Laura just entered the 10th grade this fall. She used to be so clingy to me, but now, she's so responsible that she's often cooking dinner by the time I get back from my part-time job. Bruno, Laura, and I were living a peaceful life until my mother became bedridden due to an internal illness 5 years ago. Since then, I've been busy juggling caregiving and part-time work. I haven't been able to visit my in-laws much since my mother fell ill, even missing Thanksgiving greetings. But during those times, Bruno would say, "Don't push yourself. Isn't it great to have an understanding husband?" And go back to his parents' home alone, joking and laughing. I felt terrible, but with my hands full caring for my mother, I was grateful for his understanding. However, 3 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away suddenly in an accident. My father-in-law, John, was so heartbroken, as they were very close, and Bruno's trips back home became more frequent. Moreover, Bruno would say things like,
I want to take Dad on a trip to cheer him up.
or,
I want to treat him to a delicious steak.
resulting in expenses increasing with each visit, $300, $500. But, as I had been neglecting my visits to my in-laws to care for my own mother, I couldn't really complain about the money. Then one day, as usual, Bruno mentioned the expenses for his next trip home. The next time I go back to my place, it's going to cost $1,000.
What?
I couldn't help but wonder if Bruno really needed such a large sum of money for a single trip home, but he never explained the details of the expenses. I guess it must be necessary, if I think of it as showing gratitude to John. I convinced myself with that thought. However, due to the sudden expense, I had no choice but to temporarily withdraw money from the account I had been saving for Laura's education. I'll have to cut back on trips to the beauty salon for a while and make sure not to dip into Laura's savings. From then on, I worked hard to save money and gradually replenish my daughter's account. While living these frugal days, Laura successfully completed her school applications. Just when things seemed to be settling down, "I want to see my granddaughter." "It's been a while," John said.
All right. Let's take Laura and Dad out for steak as a reward for always working hard. Really? Yay!
Seeing Lara's beaming smile. "Thank you for always being so patient," I said, stroking her head. She had never complained, despite always having to make sacrifices and helping with my mother's care. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Then, on the morning of the day they were to visit Bruno's parents, Laura cheerfully waved.
"I'll bring back some souvenirs,"
she said.
"Have fun,"
I replied with a smile. Everyone in the family was smiling. Little did we know then what was about to happen. It was around noon, 5 days after Bruno and Laura left for his parents' house. I was preparing lunch in the kitchen when I heard the entrance door open. "Who is it, coming in without ringing the bell?" Startled, I called out,
"Hello!"
and headed to the entrance, only to find Laura standing there with blood streaming down her forehead.
"What happened?"
I screamed, almost like a cry, and looked around for Bruno, but he was nowhere to be seen. Trembling, I let my trembling daughter into the house and immediately called Bruno.
"Where are you?"
"I'm at work. I told you I went on a business trip the day after I took Laura to my parents' place." I was utterly confused, as I hadn't heard anything about his work.
"I didn't know about any trip, and more importantly, Laura has come back seriously injured."
"It's probably just a fall. Girls her age tend to exaggerate. Don't take it seriously. Bye." Bruno hastily said just that and hung up forcibly. I could never just accept such an absurd story from him. "Oh, really?" While tending to my daughter. "Why did you get hurt? Did Dad go to work?" I asked. Laura, with a pale face and trembling lips, finally murmured, "Dad pushed me." I was shocked, but gently rubbed her back and listened to her story. Then, an unbelievable truth came to light. Bruno had been keeping secrets from us, and he had inflicted a serious injury on Laura after she discovered them. And that wasn't all. He had threatened Laura.
"If you tell anyone about this, next time it won't just be an injury,"
he said. John returned from an outing just as Bruno hesitated, allowing Laura to escape from her in-laws' house. Fortunately, Laura had some money with her, enabling her to take the bus alone. But I can only imagine how anxious she must have been, hiding her injuries and making her way back here. I will never forgive anyone who hurts my sweet daughter. I swore revenge, not only for Bruno raising his hand against our daughter but also for the secrets he kept from us. After hearing about Bruno's misdeeds, I reached for my mobile phone to call John. And was surprised to see a mountain of missed calls from him. "Oh, John, I'm sorry. I was cooking and didn't notice the phone." "No, it's fine. More importantly, Laura had to rush back home for some urgent matter. I was worried if she made it back safely, that's why I called so many times." Hearing John's words, I was speechless. Bruno had concocted such a lie to cover up the fact that his injured daughter had fled back home. I then spilled everything to John, who was unaware of the situation, about what I learned from Laura. "Laura will be okay. I'm taking her to the hospital." "But I can't forgive Bruno." "Could you please keep him at your house for a while so I can deal with him?" John replied. "Of course," and promised to help. He agreed to cunningly persuade Bruno to stay at his parents' house for a while. In the meantime, I ran around making various preparations for confronting Bruno. 5 days later, after finishing the investigation into Bruno's secrets, I was heading to his parents' house. Just as I was about to ring the entrance doorbell, I saw Laura running towards me, out of breath. "Mom. Wait.
"I told you to stay at home."
I can't just sit there. He needs to take responsibility for my injury." I had planned to confront Bruno alone at his parents' house, not wanting Lara to witness a conflict between her parents. However, Lara clearly had no intention of staying quiet.
I think I have a right to speak up too.
She was adamant. Reluctantly, I accepted Lara's anger and decided to face the situation together. We were greeted by John, who already knew our plan, and upon entering the living room, we saw Bruno, seemingly just woken up, lounging in his pajamas and watching TV, despite it being midday.
Oh, I thought you were on a business trip.
Surprised by my sudden voice, Bruno sprang up.
Well, I was supposed to go, but then it got cancelled unexpectedly.
Bruno began to stammer out a lame excuse.
But never mind that.
What about Lara's injury?
I want to hear about it.
Oh, the clumsy girl. She apparently fell down the stairs and hit her forehead. I almost yelled at Bruno for his blatant evasion, but John beat me to it.
Enough. I know that Lara's injury is your fault.
Lara added.
Yes. That's right.
And I glared at Bruno. Realizing he was in a tough spot, Bruno suddenly looked smug and retorted.
You never showed your face at my parents' place, and now you act all high and mighty. I've been the one doing the filial duties for both of us.
Bruno sneered, thinking I had no comeback. Indeed, until now. I had thought he was right and had kept quiet. But after hearing Lara's story, I knew all too well that Bruno's words were full of lies.
Oh really? Is leaving your father alone at home and making Lara do all the housework your idea of filial piety? That's right! Since you brought me here, you've just been relaxing at home. Shut up. This was just a one-time thing. Usually, it's me who does all the hard work.
As Bruno arrogantly boasted, I took out John's household ledger, which I had been given beforehand. It detailed not only the financial transactions, but also how Bruno spent his time at his parents' house. Let me read some of it to you. June 10th, gave Bruno $200 for transportation. He lounged around all day and went out at night as usual, returning in the morning. Food expenses increased due to Bruno's stay. I calmly read out the entries. According to the ledger, every time Bruno visited.
My wife won't even give me money for the trip.
He lied, claiming that he receives money from John. Taking advantage of my absence, Bruno portrayed me as a stingy and scary wife to gain sympathy from his father.
A grown man, still leeching off his parents, aren't you ashamed? And they even take care of various things for you. You always come over and I feel bad, thinking you're not getting any pocket money from your wife, so I try to help out. But it was all lies, wasn't it?
Bruno, cornered by our accusations, fell silent and didn't respond.
Swindling money from your father, what exactly did you use it for?
Well,
no need to say anything. You're probably just thinking up more lies.
Ignoring Bruno's muttering, I thrust a certain photograph in front of him.
You wanted money so badly because you were splurging at places like this. How do you know about this place?
The photo showed Bruno entering a dubious nightclub. Bruno's face drained of color, clearly not expecting me to know this much. Indeed, the secret Lara had discovered during the visit was about this very matter. Lara had thought Bruno was diligently taking care of John, but when she noticed his repeated late-night returns, she became suspicious and started her own investigation. She secretly installed a location tracking app on Bruno's mobile phone and, after he left, used her computer to check his whereabouts, always showing the same place. When Lara researched it on the internet, she discovered it was a night spot catering to men. While she was about to call and inform me, Bruno returned home. He became furious upon finding Lara checking his location and the club on her computer and pushed her, causing her to hit her head on the edge of a shelf and bleed. You know the rest. After hearing Lara's story, I left my mother in professional care for a few days and staked out the club to gather evidence of Bruno's escapades, capturing photos of him entering the establishment. When I saw Bruno enter the club so lightheartedly, the shock I felt was indescribable. And to think, the money for this recent trip home, though temporarily, was taken from Lara's college fund.
Dad, you're the worst.
Feeling awkward with the undeniable evidence of the photos, Bruno muttered, "Isn't this normal for men?" And looked up at John, seeking agreement.
What are you talking about? Dipping into your child's college fund for nightlife is despicable. I'm tired from work. A little fun should be okay.
Lara sighed in disbelief at Bruno's brazenness. "Mom, do you know what kind of place that is?" "Eh? No, I just took the photos and left immediately." "I thought so. Here, take a look," Lara said and spread out several printouts of the club's website on the table. John and I leaned over to see the girls in the club dressed in school uniforms. All appeared to be adults, but it was clear the establishment specialized in this kind of cosplay service. Oh. To expose our daughter to such a world. I was filled with remorse, but Lara seemed unfazed.
So Dad likes this kind of stuff.
Gross. She shuddered as if chilled while thrusting the papers at Bruno. You don't have to go that far.
Having a fetish for uniforms could be a big problem if your school clients find out, right? I doubt your company, which sells educational materials to schools, would continue employing someone with such hobbies.
As I gave him a cold gaze, Bruno turned pale.
Oh, right.
I quickly pulled out Bruno's schedule book, which I had found left in his business bag.
Looking at this, I now know all the schools you've been visiting. Maybe I should contact these clients about your wonderful hobby. Please, not that. I'm sorry. I went too far. I'll change, I promise.
Bruno must have realized there was no escaping the situation. He started to tremble and collapsed onto the floor. Despite his apologies, years of his club visits and extravagance, culminating in injuring Lara, were unforgivable.
Who's going to believe the words of a liar like you? I've already consulted a lawyer and am ready for divorce. You'll pay back every penny you squandered, plus compensation. This is the end for us. No, please.
Bruno tried to cling to Lara, but she recoiled.
Yuck. Get away from me.
And eventually, wah. He broke down crying. We watched his pathetic state with cold indifference. Shortly after, the divorce was finalized, and Bruno was ordered to pay back the $15,000 he had squandered plus $30,000 in damages. Somehow, his club visits were leaked, resulting in his termination from his job. John cut ties with him, and now Bruno lives alone in an old apartment, barely getting by with day jobs. Unable to pay the damages, he had to borrow money from dubious lenders and now lives in fear of debt collectors. Meanwhile, after the divorce, I had more time to myself. With Lara's help, my mother's health improved significantly, and she no longer needed constant care. Now, the three of us women live together, enjoying a happy and harmonious life.
I washed your baby in the washing machine.
My assailant burst into laughter the moment she saw my face. She had always disliked me, so she must have been waiting for this opportunity. But I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in response.
My daughter is sleeping right next to me.
My assailant Janice looked utterly shocked at first, then turned pale as she watched our daughter Kyrie sleeping soundly. This story is about a major family incident involving all our relatives, which happened one Christmas. My name is Patrice, a 35-year-old homemaker. I married Bryant, who is 5 years younger, and after about 7 years, we were finally blessed with a child when I turned 35. Our daughter Kyrie, now 8 months old, is a lively baby who loves her milk and sleeps well. As an older mother, I was relieved, but there were still challenges to face. One of them was my assailant, Janice, who is 10 years younger than me. She disliked me for marrying her brother and constantly harassed me whenever she got the chance. Janice's attachment and love for her brother Bryant were intense, something you might call a brother complex. I don't have siblings, so I can't fully understand, but I find it bizarre that at 25, she still wants to shower with her biological brother. Bryant always brushed it off as a joke, but I couldn't make sense of it. she looked down on me for being an older wife and for having a child late in life. When Bryant wasn't around, she would invariably taunt me, saying,
"How did an old lady like you manage to trick my brother?"
"I'm just curious, for future reference." "Janice, I don't think that's an appropriate way to speak, but..."
"Shut up. You're getting too cocky just because you're acting submissive. It's disgusting that an old lady like you stole my brother and then got pregnant."
"Could you please keep it down? The baby might wake up." I held back a sigh and deliberately spoke to Janice in polite, respectful language. After all, she was constantly at our house, clinging to Bryant and trying to follow him every time he left his seat, which also troubled him. Moreover, she would ring the doorbell early in the morning and not leave until late at night. Eventually, she started acting childishly, saying,
"I'm going to stay over at my brother's place."
Bryant had his hands full just trying to send her home.
Good grief, Janice is such a handful. "Honey, I have something I want to ask you about her."
I cautiously asked Bryant if he was aware of Janice's terrible behavior. His response was,
"I had no idea, this is news to me."
Bryant was surprised by what I told him. It all made sense now. Janice had been pretending to be nice in front of her brother and waited for him to leave to insult me. Remembering how Janice used to cling to Bryant, acting as if she were his real girlfriend, made me feel sick to my stomach. Bryant found it hard to believe, but I told him the facts as they were. Even after that, Janice continued her usual behavior.
"Let's go take a shower together, big brother,"
trying to drag him into the bathroom. But after hearing my story, Bryant began to reject her advances.
"Look, Janice, we're adults now. Taking a shower together isn't appropriate."
"I know it's weird." Janice didn't miss my muttered comment. Right after watching Bryant head for the shower, she turned to me and suddenly punched me in the stomach.
Oof!
I couldn't contain the pain and crouched down on the floor.
"It's your fault. You must have put some ideas into my brother's head."
Then she relentlessly kicked my back as I was clutching my stomach.
"Get lost already!"
As the time approached for Bryant to usually come out of the shower, Janice forcibly made me stand up and pushed me onto the sofa.
"Listen, if you tell my brother about this, I'll make you suffer even more."
Groaning in pain, I was completely overwhelmed by Janice's violent behavior. What's worse, her anger, initially directed at me, gradually shifted to someone else. It happened one day when Bryant was about to take Kyrie into the shower.
"I'll help you, big brother. Maybe I'll take a shower too."
Janice was fully intent on joining them, heading towards the bathroom. Knowing I had to stop this, I opened my mouth, but Bryant looked fed up.
"Janice, I've told you before, I'm not showering with you. I have a wife and a daughter, so it's time for you to move on from me." "No, no. Why are you being so mean?"
Ignoring her tantrum, Bryant quickly picked up Kyrie and headed for the shower. This scene repeated several times, with Janice being rejected by him each time, gradually shifting her anger from me to Kyrie. She couldn't stand the thought of the baby showering with Bryant, her brother, while she was rejected. That's probably what she felt. Soon, Janice would cause a terrible incident. One Christmas, our family was invited to my in-laws, where we gathered with relatives. Naturally, Janice was there too, and I had a bad feeling about it. However, in front of the relatives, Janice's true colors were never revealed, and surprisingly, she was quite well behaved. Despite her usual disdain for me, she approached me with a smile and acted friendly.
"But honestly, it's kind of creepy. There's no way she would suddenly be nice to me."
I decided to avoid Janice as much as possible and went to where the children of our relatives were gathered. There, over 10 children and babies were huddled together, holding on to their allowances and toys given by the relatives. I approached a relative, Opal, who was there. "Opal, thanks again for the baby clothes. How about we take a picture of our 2 kids?" She had given me matching baby clothes for my daughter and hers as a birth gift, so I had dressed Kyrie in them for the visit. We both had a great time taking photos of the children with our mobile phones. Eventually, the kids decided to play in the snow-covered garden. They were quickly covered in snow. And even a nearby baby got splashed with it. That's when Janice was asked by a relative to help wash the children in the shower. She grimaced for a moment, but then, surprisingly,
All right. Come on, everyone, follow me.
She picked up a baby with a smile and led the children away. However, with over 10 kids, they formed a long line following Janice.
Oh no, Kyrie got left behind.
Janice seemed not to notice, and Kyrie was sitting there with snow on her clothes. I was about to take Kyrie to the shower, but she started crying, probably wanting milk. Oh, there. Maybe I should give her milk first. I wanted to wash the gifted baby clothes right away, but after feeding her, Kyrie fell asleep, making it difficult to undress her. Reluctantly, I let it go, laid Kyrie beside me, and enjoyed chatting with the relatives. Then, Janice appeared with a triumphant look on her face.
Ahaha. I washed your baby in the washing machine. That'll show you.
Excuse me. I couldn't understand what she was talking about. What did she mean by washing a child in a washing machine?
Kyrie is sleeping right next to me.
What? Janice looked confused as well, seeing Kyrie sleeping soundly. We were both unclear about what was happening. Suddenly, a scream came from the bathroom. Janice and I rushed there, and we found Opal in a complete panic.
Opal, calm down. What happened?
Opal claimed that when she opened the washing machine, she found a baby inside. And that baby was her daughter. Her voice, crying and holding her child, attracted more and more relatives. Seizing the moment, Janice pointed at me.
Patrice! How could you?
What are you talking about? As soon as Janice shouted, all eyes turned to me, and I was taken aback. Then, the relatives started to confront me.
Patrice, we need to hear your side of the story.
Taking advantage of this distraction, I saw Janice sneaking out of the house.
Wait! Janice!
In this desperate moment, Bryant's sharp voice rang out.
This is not the time for accusations. We need to get to the hospital right away.
Bryant immediately called the paramedics, and Opal and her husband, with the baby, boarded the ambulance and headed to the hospital. Left at the in-laws' house, surrounded by relatives, I seethed with anger at Janice for trying to pin this on me even in such a situation. I'll make sure she pays for this. She better be ready. I decided to explain all of Janice's misdeeds to the relatives and asked for their cooperation in punishing her. After returning from the hospital, Opal and her husband, furious after hearing everything, agreed to participate in the plan. I asked Bryant to lure Janice back to the in-laws' house with a phone call.
Janice, Patrice admitted her guilt. I can't believe she would do something so horrible.
Eh? Oh, really?
So, I want to hear more about it. You ran away because you feared Patrice's grudge, right? I'll protect you, so please come back and help us uncover the truth.
Comforted by her brother's kind words, Janice naively returned to the in-laws' house. However, the house was in a state of mourning. Opal, in tears, "My daughter has passed away," she announced to the remaining relatives. While everyone was engulfed in sorrow, Janice was the only one looking smug.
It's all Patrice's fault.
What are you going to do about this? How will you make amends? Joining in Janice's sneering attitude. How could you do something like this, Patrice?
What grudge did you have against Opal?
The other relatives started accusing me. I'm so sorry. I had to.
Janice was after Bryant, so I thought of framing her for the incident with the children in the shower.
As I began to break down in tears, Janice started to panic. What? Me, after my brother? How could you make up such a lie? Is there any proof? So, I said, actually, and showed Janice and the relatives the screen of my mobile phone. It was a recording of our home's laundry room, focusing on the washing machine. Janice could be seen taking Brian's underwear from the laundry, sniffing it, and then hiding it in her pocket. She had been stealing her own brother's underwear every time she visited our house.
Janice, what are you doing? I thought it was strange that I've been losing underwear recently. Wait! This recording has nothing to do with what happened. I was forced by Patrice to put the child in the washing machine against my will.
Oh, so you admit to doing it yourself?
But you forced me to.
I immediately played another recording from my phone. It was Janice's voice saying,
I washed your baby in the laundry.
Her face turned pale as she listened.
Janice kept coming to our house every day, hitting and kicking me, so I've been collecting evidence all along.
I had suspected something fishy about Janice's unusually cheerful demeanor that day, so I kept the recording function on my mobile phone active. Janice fell to her knees and after a moment, looked up and clung to me.
Please, don't tell the police. I don't want to get arrested for this.
That's too easy for you.
You put an innocent child through this. And you almost did a terrible thing by mistaking my daughter for Opal's child and putting her in the washing machine.
What do you mean? Opal's daughter is dead, isn't she? The story about the baby dying after being put in the washing machine was a lie to deceive Janice. Opal had set up the washing machine and left for a moment. Janice then put the baby inside and closed the lid. But she didn't know how to use the washing machine and left, thinking it had started. Opal returned, switched it on, and then realized there was a child inside. There was no danger to the baby's life, but Opal was still furious at Janice.
Even my relatives accusing me was all an act to catch you off guard. You're no longer welcome in this family. But how can this be?
Janice collapsed to the floor. Afterward, Janice was arrested by the police called by the relatives. She was rejected by her beloved brother.
Never contact me again.
And cut off by all the relatives. Even if she gets out of jail, there's no one left to help her. Meanwhile, Opal's child who was put in the washing machine has fully recovered. My daughter is growing up healthy, playing with the other children like sisters, as Bryant and I watch them fondly every day. I thought it would be a piece of cake. I, being younger, could make him happier, she declared, arriving at the apartment where Mike and I lived a happy life. Standing beside her was Mike, with a grin on his face. To dispel this nightmare, I had to take action. I'm Lucy, a 26-year-old housewife. My husband, Mike, is 28 and works in sales at a printing company. I'm currently working part-time at a bookstore. Before getting married, I did various temp jobs and worked as a temporary government employee. But after marriage, I chose to work part-time. I'm not the most versatile person, so juggling a full-time job and household chores seemed impossible. Part-time work, along with housekeeping, feels just right for me. When Mike and I first met, he was unemployed. He had quit his job within just 6 months of starting at a company right after graduating from college. It was during his job search that he met me. During his job hunt, our paths crossed at the workforce center. I was working there as a temporary employee. Mike was the client I happened to assist at the reception. My first impression of him was that he was extremely friendly and charming. I immediately thought he'd be perfect in sales and recommended a few sales jobs. I remember feeling relieved when one of the jobs I recommended, at a printing company, turned out to be a success for Mike. When he came to report his employment with a beaming smile, I found myself unexpectedly smitten by him. Mike's face is cute. But at the same time he's tall and the unexpected contrast seemed wonderful. He came to report his job acceptance just before lunch break, so as soon as the break started, I looked for Mike and stopped him. I remember it took a lot of courage to do that. Mike was about to leave the workforce center at that moment. I approached him as he seemed to be pondering over something, staring at his mobile phone screen by the entrance. Mike looked surprised when I spoke to him. I think my hands were trembling when I asked if we could exchange contact information. Mike's response was simply, "I'd like that too." I blushed, but so did Mike, his face as red as mine. We exchanged contacts, and that marked the beginning of our relationship. Mike, working in sales at the printing company, and I got married 2 months after we exchanged numbers. Our friends teased us for our whirlwind marriage. But I always thought, if I were to marry, it could only be Mike. When we got married, we bought an apartment as our new home. I thought it was a bold decision at the time, but now I believe it was the right choice. I was living the best marital life with Mike, my beloved, in our comfortable home. The change in our life came about 2 years after our marriage. I think it was around the time when Mike's job began to feel more stable.
Do you think I'm kind of cute?
Mike suddenly asked. Considering he never seemed interested in his own appearance, I immediately sensed someone must have mentioned it to him.
Yes, you're kind of cute.
Did someone say that to you? I asked. Laughing, Mike said it was a comment from a new employee. I thought it was quite inappropriate for someone who had just joined the company to say such a thing.
Mike, not entirely displeased, said, "Cute, huh?"
while looking in the mirror. I told Mike to be more careful since he was being teased by younger people. Following that incident, Mike began to pay more attention to his clothes and skincare. His spending increased, and so did the bills on our credit card. When he came home from work, he would constantly hold on to his mobile phone. I started suspecting infidelity. Once I started thinking that way, it was all downhill from there. I began to doubt everything Mike did. Our good relationship until then perhaps made the backlash stronger. Although Mike appeared more buoyant than before, he didn't seem to hide it from me, which was a bit reassuring. I thought if he had something to hide, he would act suspiciously. But I was being naive. Mike's spending habits were getting worse day by day. I decided to have a serious talk with him during dinner. I told him that we should save money now, as we'll need more when we have kids. Mike didn't seem to grasp the seriousness. I emphasized it even more. Without any evidence of Mike's infidelity, I watched him become increasingly youthful in appearance and lived in frustration. But soon, the situation took a dramatic turn. I was in a hurry one morning to hang the laundry on the balcony before leaving for my part-time job. That's when I noticed someone standing in front of our apartment, looking my way. A woman in her early 20s, it seemed. Moreover, she appeared to be filming me with her mobile phone. For a moment, our eyes met through her mobile phone, and I felt a chill of fear. I quickly went back inside the house from the balcony. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, my heart was racing. I thought she must be Mike's mistress. Maybe she came to spy on me, the wife. The next day, I was stopped by the owner at the entrance. He warned me about a woman who seemed to be inquiring about me. She was asking how much our apartment cost, whether Mike and I were happily married, and had been gathering information around the apartment. It was the same as being publicly announced that I was being cheated by Mike. Reaching my limit, I finally confronted Mike. "You've been glued to your mobile phone lately. Who are you waiting to hear from?" I asked. Mike responded, "It's just work." I told him about the encounter with the apartment owner, pretending not to know.
"There seems to be a woman snooping around our home. Do you know anything about this?"
Mike's hand, holding his phone, began to tremble slightly. Sweat appeared on his forehead, even though it wasn't hot. Just as I was about to press him further, the intercom rang. I answered it, reluctantly, and there she was, the woman, smiling on the screen. I was momentarily stunned. "She's a client of mine. She has something to discuss with you," Mike said. He unlocked the door and welcomed her in. The woman who appeared at the door seemed younger than I had imagined. Almost like a high school student. She was introduced as an office worker dispatched to Mike's company. She held Mike's hand, smiling broadly, and her lack of common sense startled me. Then she declared, "I'm dating Mike." To me. And then she announced to me. While I stood there, stunned, the two of them looked at each other and laughed. Holding each other's hands. You're less important to me than she is. I want to start over with Betty, Mike said, sounding like a victim. I felt my blood boil at his words. The two seemed to be reveling in their own tragedy, and Betty was even shedding tears as she looked at me. Mike then hurled cruel words at me. He said our marriage was a mistake, that it was too hasty, and we hadn't thought it through. Finally, he even said he thought it was a mistake to have loved me. He claimed he became his true self thanks to her. His words, like poison, made me feel dizzy. However, I sensed Mike was avoiding a decisive statement. He didn't want to be the one to say divorce. I could feel the two of them waiting for me to bring it up.
Fine. I don't want anything. Let's get divorced,
I said, raising my hands in surrender. Mike relaxed his shoulders in relief at my words. Betty looked at Mike with joy. Thank you. I thought it would be easy since you looked older than Mike described. It's only natural for someone younger like me to make Mike happier. It's right for you to step aside, Betty said, without a hint of malice. Maybe she really didn't mean any harm. But to the one hearing it, those words could only be taken as malicious. I was incredibly irritated. Our marriage was quick, but the divorce proceedings were even quicker. I spent an unbelievable day filing for divorce with Mike's mistress, Betty. Now that the divorce papers are filed, technically, Mike and I are strangers to each other. The buoyant couple apparently reserved a luxury hotel for tonight. I'm alone in the apartment, packing my things. I told Mike I didn't want anything. I didn't ask for any property division, but I decided to claim alimony. No need for child support, as we don't have kids. Though she's paying me alimony, it seems like Mike will end up paying for her share too. Right after filing the divorce papers, as we were parting, Betty said, "Please leave that apartment soon. Mike and I will be living there, so a middle-aged woman should vacate quickly." She said it in a sickly sweet voice, arm in arm with Mike. It irritated me greatly, but I kept my composure. Smiling outwardly, I vowed revenge against them in my heart. I left the apartment that I shared with Mike as soon as I packed my belongings. I've left everything else to my lawyer. I made Mike and her sign an agreement not to contact me after the divorce. I almost laughed, remembering how happily they signed it. A month passed, and just when I thought it was about time, my mobile phone rang. It was Mike calling. Knowing he must be panicking, I deliberately took my time answering.
What? You signed an agreement not to contact me. I don't want to hear from you now, I said. What do you mean? $2,000 a month for the apartment? $1,500 for credit repayments? How am I supposed to pay this every month?
Mike must be holding the credit statement and the apartment payment request right now. I always managed our finances during our marriage. I was in charge of the account into which Mike's salary was deposited. When we decided to buy the apartment, Mike showed no interest in the monthly repayments. How much did he think we needed each month? Mike's take-home pay is about $1,700. It's not an amount he can afford to pay every month.
That's why I kept telling you not to waste money,
I said.
But we were supposed to be living off my salary. It's impossible with just a part-time job.
Mike was almost crying, in a state of disarray. His life was turned upside down. Indeed, I have a part-time job. But unknown to Mike, I had another job. I've been blogging about my daily life and have continued streaming since before we got married. Mike didn't know, but I've also published a book. I earn more than Mike's salary every month. The part-time job was just for show. Mike was under the illusion that he was covering all expenses with his salary. I relinquished my rights to the property and handed over the apartment to Mike for this reason. Alimony from Mike, covering Betty's alimony, the remaining credit payments, and monthly apartment installments. Mike's finances must have tightened significantly.
I could hear Betty's voice in the background. What's going on? I didn't know we were paying installments.
She seemed to be causing a ruckus. I even heard the sound of a cup breaking. Then shamelessly, Mike asked me for help. He couldn't maintain his life with his salary alone and wanted me to help with the apartment installments. Unbelievable.
What? Don't be ridiculous. Work hard and support each other with your young, pretty girlfriend.
I mocked him and hung up. I immediately blocked Mike's number. I had kept it unblocked just for this day. Now, I no longer needed Mike's number. Deleting his contact felt refreshing. Later, I heard that Mike and Betty couldn't maintain the apartment and had to put it up for sale quickly.
Betty, who married Mike immediately after our divorce, learned about his real salary and started claiming, "It's a scam, I was deceived," leading to a lawsuit.
It seems she's accusing him of fraud for misrepresenting his financial situation during marriage. Probably, Mike just didn't know about his own financial situation. Mike is working a side job at night after his main job, just to make the payments. Betty divorced Mike quickly. I moved to the countryside, which I had always wanted, and continue my graceful country living blog. I'm preparing to start a YouTube channel next month.